Hey, Sun Devil fans, Sandy Charles here with DevilsDigest.com, joined by our publisher, Hoda Reno. We are previewing ASU's first road Pac-12 game of the season as they head to Berkeley to take on Cal this Friday at 7:30. Now, Hode, there's obviously a different feel around this team this week as opposed to last week, where they were undefeated and ranked in the top 25. You've had all week to talk to coaches and players. What's the vibe around the team?
Well, I think the frustrating part for ASU coaches and players, and obviously the fans too, is that we talked so much this time last week about avoiding the letdown, which ironically happened 2018 after they beat Michigan State. Also happened later that season against Utah. And I think the players and coaches definitely wanted to prove that this is a different team, and they're not going to let a big road win against a ranked opponent to really put the team in some kind of overconfident state, maybe someone would say even cocky state. And I'm not so sure that's exactly what happened last week, but obviously losing Colorado after beating Michigan State, those questions and that narrative definitely crept up. I think from the offensive side of the ball, even though it was a loss, this was probably the best game the offense played all year long. Jaden Daniels having a career-high 345 passing yards. So it's one of those ironic situations where even after a loss, I really feel that the offense has more confidence than it has probably any point of this young 2019 season. So they definitely have something to build on. On the other hand, the defense, and I think Herm Edwards put it best, they really had been served a slice of humble pie, playing great the first 3 weeks. And last week, some people say it came down to earth. I'm not so sure I agree with that narrative, but definitely was their poorest performance of the year by far, and definitely showed some vulnerabilities that you probably didn't expect them to show. I think that just overall, the team right now is just more focused and hungrier. And I'm not saying that a team welcomes a loss for that to happen, but if there's any silver lining, I think, after a loss, especially the first loss of the season, is that maybe you're just out of your comfort zone and you can hit the reset button, be more focused, and be hungrier to succeed. So I think that's really the mindset that really is different this week compared to last week. I also have to feel that Arizona State knows that they still have some margin for error if they do want it to really contend for the South Championship. I believe that the champion of the South may end up having 3 Pac-12 losses at the end. It seems like every week we're seeing crazy results in the Pac-12, and I don't think Arizona State feels like they're out of it. But at the same time, they know that a loss tomorrow, the margin of error can decrease a lot if they want to seek that South Championship. So again, I think it comes back to just being really motivated and really eager to succeed, and maybe just a little more compared to last week.
Let's touch a little bit more on what you said with the offense. Even in a loss, still gained confidence. You mentioned Jaden Daniels' career-high passing 345 yards. The running game looked better than it had in previous weeks, and the offensive line finally was able to kind of settle down. So how do you think they'll fare against such a strong Cal defense?
Well, here's the thing about Cal. I think when we look back at the 2019 season, we'll probably say that Cal was second only to Michigan State as far as the defensive challenge they presented the Sun Devil offense. But at the same time, I feel like the devil's in the details when it comes to the Cal defense. And what I mean is they're ranked middle of the road in the 60s among FBS schools in total defense, pass defense, run defense. So I don't know if this is really a suffocating and dominating defense that Arizona State is going to go up against. And again, not to harp on the parallel to Michigan State, but I thought Michigan State is a defense that definitely provided more challenges than we'll see probably tomorrow from Cal. I also feel that this Cal defense showed that they're very susceptible to having defend spread offenses, which allows you to really have more running lanes just because there's less players committed to the line of scrimmage. And I think that from what we've seen from the Cal defense from weeks past, I think that is one vulnerability that Arizona State is definitely going to try to exploit tomorrow, I feel. And you look at the results of Cal to date, and just compare them to the quote-unquote cream puff teams that both ASU and Cal played. Cal beat UC Davis by less than 2 touchdowns. They beat North Texas by a touchdown, and those 2 games were at home. And you compare it to what Arizona State did against Kent State and Sacramento, so it absolutely dominated them, held them to 7 points on the scoreboard. And these weren't games where the Cal offense was like so far ahead that there were some garbage points by the opponent late in the fourth quarter. So again, I just don't think that this Cal defense maybe looks as intimidating as at least I personally thought just a few weeks ago. I think there's definitely some areas to exploit, and like you said, the offense is definitely coming in here with much more confidence than they did last week, even though they were undefeated last week. So I definitely feel there's some areas where the Arizona State offense can take advantage of the Cal defense. I'm not saying it's going to be a cakewalk by any means, but I also feel that when you talk about a team like Cal that's so dependent on their defense, I think there's some chinks in the armor that Arizona State's going to exploit on Friday night.
Speaking of defense, let's talk ASU defense. First couple of weeks were fantastic. They took a step back last week against Colorado. What do they still need to clean up, and how can they slow down this Cal offense?
Well, when Danny Gonzalez, the defensive coordinator, talked about what really plagued his defense, he talked about two main aspects. One was just poor game plan preparation on his behalf. He took full responsibility for this loss. I feel that when you have such a potent offense like Colorado, it can really sabotage, so to speak, your game plan. And maybe that's what happened last week, that you just came in with certain things that you wanted to accomplish, and when you have very talented skill players like Steven Montez, Laviska Shenault, even though he didn't play that much, Katie Nixon, Tony Brown, who had 3 touchdowns, that really just turned Arizona State's game plan upside down. Now, when you talk about confidence, I think the Arizona State defense, to some extent, can have some confidence going into this week just because they played much better in the second half, only gave up 10 points versus the 24 that they gave up in the first half. So they definitely show that they can correct what needs to be corrected. But another thing that Danny Gonzalez talked about was lack of aggression, and he tied that into confidence. If you remember the game against Colorado, you blinked and Colorado was already up 14-0. A lot of big plays. I mean, some people saying it was nightmares from 2015 and 16, where the Arizona State defense is giving up big plays like nobody's business. And yes, Arizona State defense did settle down, but it took them a while. And I think the lack of confidence, the lack of aggression really kind of go hand in hand. Arizona State wasn't able to get any pressure up front, and some say that that's one of the shortcomings of a 3-3-5 defense, just because you're not able always to really dominate the line of scrimmage. I somewhat disagree with that, because I think that this Arizona State defense, even going back to last year, has proven that there were times we're able to dominate the line of scrimmage. For one reason or another, that didn't happen last week. I think lack of aggression definitely has something to do with that. But you look at this Cal offense, they gave up 10 sacks just in the last 2 weeks. So pass protection is definitely a big issue. So you have a team in Cal which has issues with pass protection, and a team like ASU which didn't record a sack last week, and they are just starving to have a dominant game up front. So I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic that can really help the Arizona State defense. I also feel that Chase Gabbert is a quarterback for Cal, definitely not the caliber of a Steven Montez. Sure, he's athletic, sure he likes to run, but he's also a quarterback that proves that if you can really be creative in your coverages, he's going to have a harder time deciphering it. He's not really going to slice and dice you like a Steven Montez can, for example. So for Arizona State, on the one hand, not be too eager up front, even though this is on paper a bad pass protection team, and not have to commit more than 3-4 players in the pass rush, but at the same time just be very, very effective in their coverage as a result of that. I think this Arizona State defense can show that last week was definitely an aberration, and play at a much higher level and much closer to the level that we saw the first 3 weeks.
Now, the last time the ASU traveled to take on a ranked team was to travel to East Lansing, where they defeated Michigan State. What do they need to do to walk away with another win like that?
Well, I think just the fact that you mentioned that win, Arizona State already proved it just a couple weeks ago. They can go on the road against a ranked team and come away victorious, and they can do it in the ugliest of ways if needed. And I think this is definitely going to be a defensive battle. Like I said, I think the offense really is coming in with a measure of confidence over here, and I think that just probably employing more of a spread offense, really getting more wide receivers involved, and they really did that last week too. I think that's just a good building block, what we saw against Colorado, that can really be that much more effective, I feel, against Cal. And I feel that running game with Eno Benjamin, with an offensive line that's now settling down, is just about to break out. I don't know if it's going to break out Friday night at Berkeley, but I think I won't be surprised if we see actually a higher rate of success with the running game, especially if Arizona State is able to successfully and effectively spread the Cal defense. One interesting parallel on the other side of the ball is that if you remember, before the Michigan State game, I talked about the Michigan State offense having issues with the 3-3-5. They showed that in their season opener against Tulsa. Well, sure enough, Cal actually has that same kryptonite, if you will, because against North Texas, again, a game that was much closer than anybody thought it was going to be, the Cal offense faced a 3-3-5 defense. They didn't prove really that they're able to run up and down on that. So I think that is definitely one aspect that the Arizona State defense is going to exploit on Friday night. So I definitely see this game as a defensive struggle. As a beat writer, you're happy. A 7:30 kickoff might be a real quick game if there's not a lot of points scored. But I think Arizona State does go back to its winning ways and beating Cal 17-13 on Friday night.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hode. Be sure to keep it locked into DevilsDigest.com for all of our pregame coverage and, of course, throughout the whole game Friday night live from Berkeley and postgame coverage. For Hode Rubino, I'm Sandy Charles. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you Friday.